Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day that you've given us. Thank you for allowing us all to join together here. Father, we just ask that you be with Bobby and just help him to feel rested and feel better. Whatever's going on with his eyes, we just ask for his healing. And we just ask for everybody here that anything that they may be going through, that you'll be with them in whatever it is and just intervene in the situation. We lift up Haley to you. She's away at camp. I just pray that you keep her safe, keep your angels around her, and just allow her to have a good evening and be able to come home safely tomorrow. We ask that you will bless the reading of the word and just give us the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding that we need as we study. And we ask for our fellowship here tonight that you will bless it and just be with each and every person here. We give you all the thanks and praise right now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So there's kind of a lot to talk about. I'm going to make every attempt to get through Leviticus 17, but we will see how the evening goes. But we are picking up today in Leviticus 14, verse 33. So last 2 weeks ago when we were here, we talked about the lepers and the leprosy and what that was. So we're going to start off finishing up that chapter, which is going to go into the laws for the cleaning the houses. So just like we have been doing, we'll read from the Bible and then go into the notes. Okay. So verse 33. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I give you for a possession, and I put a case of leprous disease in a house in the land of your possession, then he who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, there seems to me to be some case of disease in my house. Then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes to examine the disease, lest all that is in the house be declared unclean. Afterward, the priest shall go in to see the house. He shall examine the disease. If the disease is in the walls of the house with greenish or reddish spots, and if it appears to be deeper than the surface, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. The priest shall come again on the seventh day and look. If the disease has spread in the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take out the stones in which is the disease and throw them into an unclean place outside the city. He shall have the inside of the house scraped all around, and the plaster that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other plaster and plaster the house. If the disease breaks out again in the house, after he has taken out the stones and scraped the house and plastered it, then the priest shall go and look. If the disease has spread in the house, it is a persistent leprous disease in the house, it is unclean. He shall break down the house, its stones and timber, all the plaster of the house, and he shall carry them out of the city to an unclean place. Moreover, whoever enters the house while it is shut up shall be unclean until the evening. Whoever sleeps in the house shall wash his clothes, and whoever eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes and looks, and if the disease has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, for the disease is healed. And for the cleansing of the house, he shall take 2 small birds with cedar wood and scarlet yarn and hyssop, and shall kill one of the birds in an earthenware vessel over fresh water, and shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet yarn, along with the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the bird that was killed, and in the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. Thus he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and with the fresh water, and with the live bird, and with the cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet yarn. He shall let the live bird go out of the city into the open country. So he shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for any case of leprous disease, for an itch, for leprous disease in a garment or in a house, and for a swelling or an eruption or a spot, to show when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law for leprous disease. So once they crossed over to Canaan, because remember at this time they still hadn't reached the promised land. God promised them Canaan, but they weren't at that point where they've received it yet. They're still at the base of Mount Sinai in the wilderness. When a house had leprous disease, it had to go through examination just the same as the person would. Remember, the person would have to present to the priest. The priest would determine what was going to happen based on whatever spot or blemish the person had. So before the priest could even enter the house, it had to be emptied so that they could do the inspection. And if the walls had greenish or reddish spots deeper than the surface, so this is like mold, or what's another thing? Asbestos, is that the same as mold?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, something like that. They'd have to close up the house for 7 days. So it would be kind of like they do with where they tent the house. I haven't seen them do that in a really long time, but where they have to they have to put the tent over the house and
Crazy.
you're not allowed to go there. Yes. Like they put that circus thing up and you could see like everybody knows that your house is infected.
Yeah.
Like that's how I picture this, because even though they lived in, like they were building houses or tents or whatever, like everybody's going to notice that your house is the house that you avoid like the plague.
Oh, yeah.
So if the disease spreads after the 7 days, the owners of the house would have to take out the infected stones and take them outside the city. They'd have to remove the plaster, and the infected areas would have to be redone with clean stones and plaster. So basically you're doing construction on your house to get rid of these spots. If the demolition or the renovation doesn't work and the disease returns, now the house has to be torn down. Like now you're homeless and you just don't have a house. Like your house is infected and that's just what it is. Like imagine losing your entire house because of what's growing inside your walls. Like you may not be able to see it, but now it's growing to where you can see it. You've already tried to treat it and it keeps happening. Now you don't have a house and you have to start over. Yeah. And I mean, where they were living, it was moist, it was humid, it was hot. So what happens with that? It's more of a reason or more of an opportunity to grow and spread.
Right.
So even walking into the house while it's under quarantine, you would be considered unclean. If there is no spread after the rebuilding of the damaged parts, your house is clean. And just with every other ceremony, you'd have to take the 2 birds, the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, the hyssop. You'd have to sacrifice one bird, dip it in the blood over fresh water, and then the other bird, the now bloody bird that they're using, that would go. Okay, so does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments, anything about the house?
No.
Wait, so their houses were built out of like, I don't know, I'm just trying to picture it cuz I'm thinking about like the tents, but like either way, like how gross would that be to have like stuff growing on your walls or
Yeah.
that you could
Isn't that
see?
like adobe? Wasn't their house like adobe?
Well,
Like the mud wall?
okay, so and here it says when you come to the land. So this is because they don't have these houses yet.
Right.
So they're gonna be built when they get in there. Then they're gonna have like their own dwelling places, their houses that they can formally build. So I guess this is like,
the rules for when they build those houses.
yeah,
Because
like
right now-
what to look for.
Right now, everything is made out of like cow skin and sticks, and they're still intense. Like the tabernacle, is it the tabernacle? But
Yeah.
Yeah, not as fancy.
Yeah, pretty much because they're still living in tents at this point. So they're made out of animal skins and their clothes are still made, like they're civilized, but they're not fully civilized as far as like having their own neighborhoods and things like that, like we would have today.
Mm.
They're still like desert dweller people
Okay.
because they're trying to make their way into there. But once they get there, then yeah, they're gonna have the stones. It's gonna be made kind of no doubt better than our houses are made today. No doubt. But can you imagine like you took all that time to build your house, to build the stones, like to stack the stones, put the wood, like you had to go out and forage your own wood,
And then
build your house, and then have to take it apart because something's growing in the walls.
Yeah, that would
Like
be
and you're
terrible.
just breathing it.
the house in Georgia that we had, it was where we had a basement. That was nothing but mold under it.
In the basement?
So we couldn't even go down there.
Oh, that's terrible. See, no, your house, that's it. You would have had to just take it down.
Yeah.
No house.
Yep.
Just because it's in the basement, it's still part of the house. You would have had no house.
That's probably why we
Would have had to live amongst the trees.
right.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. So that part is like the leprous person, you could just see, but here they're giving a warning, like God's giving a warning, like, hey, this is going to happen. And did anybody catch in verse uh 34, where it says, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I give you for a possession, and I put a case of leprous disease in a house in the land of your possession. Like,
Wow.
it's not saying like you may just get it. Like God's saying, and I put it in there.
Right.
Like, I don't know what that's about,
Yeah. Why would he do that?
but it's just like, okay, is that a form of, at that point, is that a form of judgment or like a warning?
Maybe a test.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Let's see if you were actually paying attention and if you're going to follow the ceremonial laws
Right.
that I've put into place. I'm like, wait a minute, why would you put that there, God? But I mean, there, he's God, so he can do whatever he wants. Okay, so anything else before we move on to 15?
No, not for me.
No. Okay. 15 was a little wild for me because I really had a difficult time. So I did have to spend a little more time studying because this was a lot. So now we're
Yeah.
gonna get into the bodily discharge.
Hmm.
So we shall start with reading chapter 15. Okay. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. This is the law of his uncleanness for a discharge. Whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is blocked up by his discharge, it is his uncleanness. Every bed on which the one with the discharge lies shall be unclean, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. Anyone who touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whoever sits on anything on which the one with the discharge has sat shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches the body of the one with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. If the one with the discharge spits on someone who is clean, he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Any saddle on which the one with the discharge rides shall be unclean, and whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. Whoever carries such things shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Anyone whom the one with the discharge touches, without having rinsed his hands in water, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. An earthenware vessel that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. When the one with the discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes. He shall bathe his body in fresh water and shall be clean. On the 8th day, he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. The priest shall use them, one for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord for his discharge. If a man has an emission of semen, he shall bathe his whole body in water and be unclean until the evening. Every garment and every skin on which the semen comes shall be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, both of them shall bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening. When a woman has a discharge and the discharge in her body is blood, she shall be in her menstrual impurity for 7 days. Whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. Everything on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean. Everything also on which she sits shall be unclean. Whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches anything on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whether it is the bed or anything on which she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until the evening. If any man lies with her and her menstrual impurity comes upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in uncleanness. As in the days of her impurity, she shall be unclean. Every bed on which she lies, all the days of her discharge, shall be to her as the bed of her impurity, and everything on which she sits shall be unclean, as in the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. Whoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, and shall count for herself 7 days, after that she shall be clean. On the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest shall use one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. The priest shall make atonement for her before the Lord for her unclean discharge. Thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. This is the law for him who has a discharge, and for him who has an emission of semen, becoming unclean thereby. Also for her who is unwell with her menstrual impurity, that is, for anyone, male or female, who has a discharge, and for the man who lies with a woman who is unclean.
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
It took me a lot too, because I was like, wait, like why? Like what kind of discharge are we talking about? I mean, any discharge from the body is unclean,
Right.
but literally everything that I was looking at, everything that I was trying to study, it was all leading to um the discharge coming from the reproductive organs of both men and women. And I was like, okay. So then, like the verse 3 through 15, it's talking about abnormal discharge in a man. So any leakage or blockage from the penis, obviously. So, and it's not talking about sex. This piece is not talking about like having sex with your spouse. So I went in and was looking at why a man would have an abnormal discharge. And so it was giving like a sexually transmitted disease, a urinary tract infection, prostatitis, balanitis, or any other like dermatological conditions. So anything other than urine
Right.
would be included here. Or, when you're in the act of sex, then that's not included here. But as far as blockages, it was um it was saying like urethral stricture, which can be caused by inflammation, injury, or an STD. Like those are the most common reasons for an abnormal discharge or blockage for a man. So anything he touched, laid on, sat on, automatically unclean. Anyone else that came in contact with the man or the object that he had or that he had touched, you were also considered unclean until the evening, and you had to not only bathe, but you also had to wash your clothes. And the purpose of that, so basically you're put away from everybody, and it's to stop the spread of infection.
Right.
Because it's easy to touch stuff. Like I don't know why he would just be touching random stuff, but
Right.
who knows? Like who knows? But so there are the three ways of becoming unclean. The man himself was unclean, coming into contact with an object or the person, or someone else coming into contact with an unclean object. Even being spit on by the unclean, that person that got spit on would also be unclean, because now you've got the unclean person's saliva on you.
Right.
So now you're automatically unclean. Like imagine just walking around spitting on people just to spread your whatever.
That's
Anymore.
disgusting.
It is. So in this case, he would be on restriction due to being ceremoniously unclean. But unlike the leper, remember the leper would get cast out.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't get cast out. He's just separated. So basically, and here it's saying like when the unclean comes into contact with the clean, their uncleanness transfers over. Like the clean person doesn't automatically transfer their cleanness onto the unclean.
Right.
And in the case of the leper, remember the priest was the one that was going and doing the inspection. In this case, that doesn't happen. The person themselves have to be accountable and have to isolate themselves for 7 days or until their discharge is over.
So they're better.
And when it's ended, now the man would have to be ceremonially cleaned. And so now he can present his offering on the 8th day to the Lord. And one would be a sin offering, the other a burnt offering. And with the 2 turtle doves or the 2 pigeons, this was a smaller offering. So this wasn't as costly as
A goat.
A bull, a ram. Like this was just, just to be made ceremonially clean again and in right standing. But imagine if the person with the discharge is like your spouse or your child or an elderly relative. You can't come in contact with them or anything that they touch.
You can't sit on the same couch.
Nope. You can't touch their bed. You can't touch their couch. You can't, even the saddle. Like you can't even ride on the same saddle. So if y'all are sharing a donkey, that's too bad for you. Now you got to use your Lamborghinis and you're gonna have to huff it.
Right.
Somebody walking for sure.
Right. Like at that point, the unclean person has the advantage because it's his. So that is, any questions on that piece?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I was talking, but I had it on mute, but that was wild.
Yeah.
It was like I was like, I hope that's not what it's talking about, but that's what it's talking about.
Is there anything in there about brushing their teeth and brushing their hair so I could show the twins what God
No.
said about?
I mean, look, hygiene is hygiene, right? Like you have
Yeah,
to take care of everything that God has given you, and your hair God gave you, and your teeth God gave you. So I mean, in
there you
that
go.
sense, they have to be
There
good
you go.
stewards of everything on them. Okay, so now verses 16 through 18, this is covering an emission of semen. So anytime, whether it was like accidental or during sex with a spouse, the man would be considered unclean until evening and would have to bathe, or anything that that person touched would have to be cleaned. It would be unclean and require cleansing. And then the following day, they would be clean. So anytime there was any emission, you were still unclean for the rest of that day. And you had to take a shower, obviously, good hygiene anyway. But
Right.
both the man and the woman would be unclean if they had sex, and they would have to undergo separation for the evening. So now both of them are unclean, so they'd have to go take a shower, wash their clothes, separate, and then the following day they would be okay. And this was a way to prevent sexual and spiritual corruption. In ancient times, there were ritual prostitution among the pagan nations that created temptation. Like they actually had temple prostitutes that would sit at the temples and just have like orgies and things like that. So, I mean, you can imagine there was a lot going on around them. And the Israelites were set apart, they were in their own little community. And so God had a standard for them,
Right.
and they were required to keep that standard at all times in all ways. So God is laying out all of the rules so that there's no question later, and they can be on guard for anything that does not align with God's standards.
Wow.
So now we get into the women and their cycle. So verses 19 through 24. So the monthly cycle, the mean week, anyone that would touch her is unclean until the evening. And just like the man, anything she sat on or laid on, that would also be unclean. Anyone that touches her bed is unclean until the evening and would require him to bathe and wash his clothes. If a man lays with her during this time, now he also takes on her uncleanness for the 7 days. So now you made the decision to do that while she's in her time. You also are unclean for the full time. Avoidance of intercourse during this time is also mentioned in Ezekiel 18 as evidence of a righteous man.
Right.
And God commands sexual restraint. So obviously, during that time, you were to refrain from touching your spouse. But that would also be an easier week for her, right? Because she can't touch nothing, she can't do nothing. So, if there's kids, like, cleaning, all that stuff, like she may have had a week off every month. For fear of contaminating.
Right.
But unlike the man, for this specific issue, there's not a time of washing or anything like that. There's not a excuse me, there's not a ceremony that needed to be performed, because this was a natural thing that happened every month
Right.
for women.
Makes
Okay.
sense.
So the last section of that is verses 25 through 33. And this is for the unusual or abnormal bodily discharge with an extended period time or, hemorrhaging, something like that, that's causing the woman to bleed longer than the normal time. So she would remain ceremoniously unclean as long as the discharge continues. Everywhere she laid, sat would be, I don't know what I said that, but it would be made unclean. Whoever touches any of these objects are also unclean, must bathe, wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. And just as the man with abnormal discharge, a 7-day isolation period would be required for her as well. And on the 8th day, or as long as the issue is stopped, she would also have to take the offering of 2 turtle doves or pigeons and present them before the Lord to give them to the priest for offering, one being a sin offering and the other a burnt offering. And I was looking at commentaries, and one of the commentators, Mark Rooker, he states the reason the offerings were for these discharges were to be made was because they were considered abnormal. So it's not that, it was sinful, they were just ceremonially unclean. And the purpose, according to verse 31, was to keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness. Remember, over and over, it was already warned. Death was a result of defiling the tabernacle because God dwelt there. So bodily discharge in the sense of fluids exchanged during sex or a woman's monthly cycle, they were not seen as morally wrong or sinful, but purity was still the standard for God. And atonement was still required to enter the presence of the Lord once the person was made clean.
Makes sense.
And one of the videos that I had watched that was kind of going into a little bit of it was saying that the two were connected. Blood is the symbol of redemption. So we know Jesus shed his blood for our redemption
Right.
to redeem us. But semen is a symbol of life. Blood is as well, but semen is what helps with reproduction. Obviously, without that, the women cannot get pregnant. So I thought that was interesting.
That's interesting.
This
Okay,
signal.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I want to interject about, the patriarchy and why semen is a symbol of life.
Okay, go
You
for
know,
it.
that's just it. That's just it. It probably wasn't translated like that from Hebrew. Those probably were not God's words. He didn't want men to think that they were the ones that, had the key to life.
Maybe
But
not.
but that's just the way that it's worded and that's the way it was translated. So that's the
Because it takes both, right?
right, and that's the narrative, semen being the symbol of life, and as if women are not the ones that grow and create it, I don't know.
Yes. It
My
does take
thoughts.
both. But you also have to remember Adam was created first, right? And
Right.
Adam, like when men and women are already born with all of the eggs that they're gonna have, all of the um I guess babies. Because remember, I can't remember where it was, but when we were talking about the priesthood of Melchizedek,
Mm-hmm.
Abraham already had like the life of Isaac in him. It just wasn't time for him to come yet. Just like the women, we already have all the eggs that we're ever going to produce. They're already put into us.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever your eggs are out, and that's it. But one thing to remember is it does take both. You can't, a man can't make a baby by himself and a woman can't make a baby by herself.
Right.
It
Right.
requires both. But it's when the semen enters and hits the egg that the spark of life comes,
Right.
that forms a baby.
Right.
But I know there's a little sex education lesson.
Thank you.
Hey, welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for speaking up.
I just don't agree that semen should be life, like considered life. Like I just don't agree with that.
So for anybody that knows, Sarita, the patriarchy is a sore spot. So
No,
we're
no, okay, so maybe not in this situation, but and it's not the patriarchy, but I just feel like the way that the Bible was translated at the time that it was, and maybe some of the books that were put into what is it, the canon,
Mhm.
were placed right there and placed in there to control the narrative that men are superior to women.
I mean, they are the leaders of the household, though,
Yeah, they are.
And yes, but they're not
in the right sense,
superior.
though. In the right sense.
Yes.
In the right sense.
They're not the bot.
Now,
Right.
as far as the symbols of redemption and symbols of life, that was from a commentator. So it's not like that piece there didn't come from the Bible.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what a commentator
Okay.
said.
Because that was like bothering me. That was
Yeah, no, that was from a commentator. So that's not, I mean, we read word from word in the chapter. So nowhere does it say that that's what it is. That's just what the commentators were putting, and I thought it was interesting. So that's why I added it in there. But that is
yeah.
not, for the record, that is not stated
How
in the
can
Bible.
Sarita get all hyper?
No,
I mean, I love the
Hyper.
conversation.
so there are certain things like no, I like read the Bible and I try to read it every day, and there's certain things that I believe that like were translated or misinterpreted in the Bible to fit certain narratives, or maybe people read them and they take it into like a don't read it in the context that it's meant to be, and they take it to mean something else or fit the narrative. And I think that happens a lot, that the
Oh
Bible
yeah.
tends to get misinterpreted. And I think that one way that it does, and a big way, and that's just happens to be what I'm reading about and looking into right now, is about men being superior to women, or that women didn't have as much rights, and saying you see it all in the Bible, that what was it in Sodom when he gave his daughter instead of giving his house guest, like things like, and obviously like it's just so many different things and so many different, it obviously was a different time, right? But I just feel like I said certain things were interpreted and taken out of context to fit certain narratives.
And there are a lot of people that will take a lot of things out of context, and they'll use them and they'll twist the
Right.
Bible for
Right.
for their own agenda, and
Right.
that's not right. But we have to remember that God is also a God of order. So he created in the order that he saw fit based on how it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
mean that the man gets to claim all superiority. Like the Eve was created for Adam as a helpmate. So,
Right.
while she is to be submissive to him, that doesn't mean that she needs to be abused by him because he
Right.
has that superiority.
And that's what I feel like people or men, or, you know, back in the day, just that sort of thing, I feel like was taken out of context. And some of the things that that happened in the Bible where women were traded around, men could have multiple wives, but a woman was stoned to death, if she took on another husband, or how it's considered adultery for the man to marry a woman who was married before. But I don't know, I just so many different things,
Yeah, and there's context for all of it. Like there's,
Right.
and it's understanding it through the spirit, the lens of the Holy Spirit, and what he leads, because he leads into all truth, rather than, and that's why it's important that we study and read the word for ourselves, and take things
Right,
back to God,
exactly.
because you know people are just going to talk, and so it does get twisted and it does get misused. So it's
Mhm.
really understanding the context of the times, the context of
Right.
who
And
God is, why he created that order, and respecting that order, but not using it in a negative sense that God didn't intend it for.
right.
Good discussion. Does
And
anybody else
again,
have anything to add?
it's just based on what I'm looking into and reading right now, guys. I'm not really like a feminist or, or anything like that. I just,
No, but
Do
it's
any,
the truth.
mhm.
do any of the men have anything to say?
Sorry, Bobby. Sorry, Bobby.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Are you sleeping?
No.
He's just sitting there with the spark of life, just chilling, listening to all of us, just being a man.
So
Yeah,
we're
no.
here listening, you know.
Oh, Dad would have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Dad told me to say hi. He went to bed like an hour and a half ago.
Hi, Dad.
Uh, uh,
Okay, so to finish this off, to recap this, or not recap, but just to finish it off. So all of this was as far as the abnormal and the normal. It was according to Matthew Henry, who it's another commentary. He's a very popular commentary person. This signified the contagion of sin, the danger we are in of being polluted by conversing with those that are polluted, and the need we have with the utmost circumspection to save ourselves from this untoward generation. So, as we've talked about throughout the entire book of Leviticus so far, the laws were put in place to maintain a strict requirement for cleanness and for reverence to conduct themselves in ways that are pleasing to the Lord. So everything is outlined. And for practical hygiene and community health, this served both purposes. Washing your hands, your garments, breaking porous pottery limits disease spread. And excuse me, I was looking at Bible Hub, because they have like commentaries, different commentaries that you can read. It breaks it down into like the Hebrew, what the words mean. And it was saying that modern science confirms many infections travel by bodily fluids, and unclean until the evening creates a built-in quarantine, while sunset marks a fresh start. So remember the evening in Genesis 1 had said that the evening starts. Let me go there quick. Genesis 1 and 5. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening and there was morning the first day. So the evening was that started at sunset. Now foreshadowing it, when Jesus came, that principle was reversed. Because remember, the unclean transferred over to the clean and made that person unclean. But when Jesus came, he was already clean in every sense. So when he touched an unclean person, he made them clean. They did not make him unclean. He didn't take that on because he touched them or came into contact with them or sat at their house. He made the people around him clean. And we will see more about that once we get into the Gospels and really walk through Jesus' life while he was here. Um, and I did mark down a few scriptures because there was a story in the Gospels about the woman with the issue of blood. This is mentioned in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I'm going to read all three of them. They're similar, but each person has a little bit different to add. So in Matthew 9:20 through 22, the woman with the issue of blood. Just then, a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. He's talking about Jesus. She said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned and saw her. "Take heart, daughter," he said, "your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed at that moment. Mark 5:25 through 34 says, And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." And then the last verse that we'll look at, Luke 8:43 through 47. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. Immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." So think about 12 years this lady has bled. So she's been unclean by Levitical standards for 12 years.
That's a lifetime.
Like, imagine how lonely that would be if she had to remain separated, if she had to do everything by herself, and she's going to doctors, she's spending all her money. Now she has nothing and she has no hope. But she hears about this man that's coming around and healing people. And so just by that, she didn't even need to touch him or come in contact with him. Just by touching the hem of his garment, she had faith that even touching the tiniest little shred of string connected to him would heal her. And she was. After 12 years, like, imagine, that's more than a decade of being unclean.
Yes.
And now she can finally go and live her life and be back in society.
Miracle.
Like, that would be, oh, I can't even imagine how she would feel.
That is so beautiful.
Isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
that, like, everybody else Jesus touched. Everybody else, like, had some form of interaction with Jesus. But for her, she was just like, look, as long as I could see the back of his head and I could touch a string, I'm good. Like, and having to
Wow.
fight through the crowds, having to fight through, and yeah, that takes a lot. That's a lot of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could be, like, oh, well, what if it doesn't happen? But then there's the, okay, well, I believe it's going to happen. So I'm going to do it despite the crowds, despite everybody that's following Jesus around.
And I'm sure she traveled to get there.
She probably did. It doesn't say where she came from, but I mean, this was like her last hope of being healed.
Right.
Talk
Okay,
about faith.
I know. Anybody else have anything else to add, comment before we move to chapter 16?
I don't.
No.
Okay. So then we shall move on. Okay, so chapter 16, this covers the Day of Atonement. So the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before the Lord and died. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron your brother not to come at any time into the holy place inside the veil, before the mercy seat that is on the ark, so that he may not die. For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat, but in this way Aaron shall come into the holy place." with a bull from the herd for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on the holy linen coat and shall have the linen undergarment on his body. And he shall tie the linen sash around his waist and wear the linen turban. These are the holy garments. He shall bathe his body in water and then put them on. He shall take from the congregation of the people of Israel 2 male goats for a sin offering and 1 ram for a burnt offering. Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering for himself and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. Then he shall take the 2 goats and set them before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Aaron shall cast lots over the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for the Lord and use it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel. Aaron shall present the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall kill the bull as a sin offering for himself. He shall take a censer full of coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of sweet incense, beaten small, and he shall bring it inside the veil, and put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is over the testimony, so he does not die. He shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the front of the mercy seat on the east side. And in front of the mercy seat, he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people, and bring its blood inside the veil, and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it over the mercy seat and in front of the mercy seat. Thus he shall make atonement for the holy place, because of the uncleanness of the people of Israel, and because of their transgressions, all their sins. And so he shall do for the tent of meeting, which dwells with them in the midst of their uncleanness. No one may be in the tent of meeting from the time he enters to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out and has made atonement for himself, and for his house, and for all the assembly of Israel. Then he shall go out to the altar that is before the Lord and make atonement for it, and shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar all around. He shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the people of Israel. When he has made an end of atoning for the holy place and the tent of meeting and the altar, he shall present the live goat. Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the iniquities of the people of Israel and all their transgressions, all their sins. He shall put them on the head of the goat and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a man who is in readiness. The goat shall bear all their iniquities on itself to a remote area, and he shall let the goat go free in the wilderness. Then Aaron shall come into the tent of meeting, and shall take off the linen garments that he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there. He shall bathe his body in water in a holy place, and put on his garments, and come out and offer his burnt offering, and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. The fat of the sin offering he shall burn on the altar. He who lets the goat go to Azazel shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. And the bull for the sin offering and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, shall be carried outside the camp. Their skin and their flesh and their dung shall be burned up with fire. He who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. It shall be a statute to you forever, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict yourselves, and shall do no work, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. For on this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you. You shall be clean before the Lord from all your sins. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest to you, and you shall afflict yourselves. It is a statute forever. The priest who is anointed and consecrated as priest in his father's place shall make atonement, wearing the holy linen garments. He shall make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tent of meeting and for the altar. He shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. This shall be a statute forever for you, that atonement may be made for the people of Israel once in the year because of all their sins. And Aaron did as the Lord commanded Moses. So here, the Day of Atonement, God is setting the standard and outlining the appropriate time and way for Aaron, and of course, every high priest after him, to approach God. So remember back in Leviticus 10, two of Aaron's sons were killed for going into the holy place and offering profane fire before the Lord. So remember in the makeup when God was instructing on how to build the tabernacle, what each section did, behind the veil was the Holy of Holies. So this is where the Lord would dwell. This is where the Lord would appear. And this is also where the Ark of the Covenant, with the top being the mercy seat, was. So here, God's issuing Aaron a warning and following with a promise by saying, he will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. And Aaron could only go in by invitation. So there was no willy-nilly, I'm just going to pop in there and see what's going on. There had to be a designated time and way to be able to go beyond the veil. Access, of course, was opened by Jesus' finished work on the cross, but we're still required to approach him with humility and reverence. So going into the instructions of entering the holy place, Aaron had to bring a bull from the herd for a sin offering and a ram for burnt offering. So remember, both of these are expensive animals and they had to be perfect, so blemish free. He had to wash his body in water, put on the holy linen coat, the undergarment, the linen sash around his waist, and a linen turban. And I was looking at on logos, and it was saying that linen represented purity and holiness. The material's natural whiteness made it a natural emblem of ritual cleanness. So this requirement also had practical purposes, and we read about this in Exodus 29, 39 through 43. And am I in the right chapter? 29, 39 through 43. Okay, I think I wrote that wrong.
Not matching.
No. Oh, it's 28. Exodus 28, 39 through 43. Sorry, Denisha, I sent you the wrong one.
Worries.
So 39. Okay, so Exodus 28, 39 through 43. It says, you shall weave the coat in checker work of fine linen. You shall make a turban of fine linen, and you shall make a sash embroidered with needlework. For Aaron's sons, you shall make coats and sashes and caps. You shall make them for glory and beauty. You shall put them on Aaron your brother and on his sons with him, and shall anoint them and ordain them and consecrate them, that they may serve me as priests. You shall make for them linen undergarments to cover their naked flesh. They shall reach from the hips to the thighs, and they shall be on Aaron and on his sons when they go into the tent of meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister in the holy place, lest they bear guilt and die. This shall be a statute for him and for his offspring after him. So the linen was also made for so that the priests wouldn't sweat, because they would still be unclean while perspiring. And this is talked about, 953. I probably should have had these pages marked. I did not. In Ezekiel 44, I'm almost there, guys, I promise.
Take your time.
17 through 18. When they enter the gates of the inner court, they shall wear linen garments. They shall have nothing of wool on them while they minister at the gates of the inner court and within. They shall have linen turbans on their heads and linen undergarments around their waists. They shall not bind themselves with anything that causes sweat. So this is this may be another concern that bodily fluids, including sweat, could introduce ritual impurity into the sacred space. And then I put down some fun facts about linen because I was curious on why that was the chosen or the specified
Let's hear it.
Garment and or material. So this is really just to understand a little bit better of why, like how detailed God is for his own purposes. And we'll see linen mentioned in the Bible several times as we go through.
Yeah.
So linen is made from the long fibers behind the bark in the stem of the flax plant. Linen feels cool in the summer, but still appears fresh and crisp. They are softer to the touch also. The process of separating the flax fibers from the plant is laborious and painstaking and must be done where labor is plentiful and inexpensive. Many countries cultivate linen fiber. Poland, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, and the British Isles. The United States does not do any commercial production. So any linen materials that we get, like linen sheets, towels, those kind of things, they're often imported from other countries. Which I thought was interesting because, I mean, people talk about linen, but I didn't know that we don't make that here. The only time you can buy that local is if you actually find a person who still does like hand weaving and cultivates their own flax plants and things like that.
Cool.
But I thought that was interesting just to give a little background on why that is the chosen material for the priests. Ancient Egypt also used these fibers to make the white fabric when they were mummifying the Egyptian pharaohs. Ancient Greeks and Romans also valued this material. I put the link there on what's required to actually grow the plant and harvest it if anybody wants to take a look at it. There's a lot of steps in it and it like breaks down the time and stuff. I thought it was really interesting. And I'm a nerd, so I just like to study stuff anyway. But okay. So continuing on, notice how Aaron was not to wear his priestly garments that were meant for beauty and glory. The linen here was simple and humble. So he had to be in the humblest clothes, the most clean clothes to be able to enter behind the veil. So from the congregation, he would take 2 male goats for a sin offering and 1 ram for a burnt offering. Before Aaron was even able to atone for the people, he had to make the offering, which was the bull, to atone for his own sin first, for his sin and of his house, so for his children, before he could even proceed any further. And for reference, Leviticus 4 is where we studied the sin offering. So this was like the unintentional sin. And once that process was complete, Aaron was to take the 2 male goats and present them at the entrance of the tent and cast lots. So 1 lot was to be for the Lord, and 1 lot was for Azazel. I was trying to look up what Azazel meant because I want to say in Enoch, that's the name of one of the angels, but the fallen angels. But at the bottom of my Bible, it just said this could be the name of a place or a name of a demon. And the Strong's Concordance in H5799 said, gave the description or the definition that this is a scapegoat or the goat of departure. So this is the goat that would be sent away into the wilderness. And casting lots was like our modern day flipping of a coin. So it involved throwing objects to determine answers beyond human comprehension or to make decisions requiring divine guidance. And we'll see this practice mentioned several times throughout the Bible too. They cast lots for Jesus' clothes while he was up on the cross as well. So just keep that in mind. This isn't one of those, nothing like magic. The lot casting was one of the few legitimate means of divine revelation in the Bible and was not condemned like other divine practices such as soothsaying, magic, and necromancy. It had divine sanction and control, and it was only used when decisions were important and when wisdom or biblical injunctions provided insufficient guidance. And the Lord was believed to direct the lots, and result was understood to pronounce what God's will was in that situation. Any questions so far?
Mm,
No.
Okay.
mm-mm.
Just want to make sure because I know it's a lot. I know it's
Yeah,
a lot. So
that
I'm
was
trying to
a lot to soak in.
I'm trying to break it down, and that's why like I didn't want to go too far into too many chapters, and that's why the notes have a lot of information. So I'm kind of reading it quickly, but feel free to jump in if there is anything that you want to talk about. Um, okay, so the offering protocol. So once again, Aaron had to present the bull by himself. So notice here how nowhere doesn't make mention until the very end that Aaron had assistance. This was all him. This was instructions that he was given and that any high priest that came after him had to follow. Um, the tabernacle was typically a busy place, right? So everybody's going in with their offering, they're buying, the animals and things like that. In this case, it says that Aaron, no one was to be there. So Aaron was alone. And in verse 11, it says for himself 3 separate times. So he had to go in for himself. He had to take the offering for himself. He had to do everything for himself. And now he's going in behind the veil with a censer full of coals of fire from the altar and 2 handfuls of sweet incense. And remember, we read about what the sweet incense was. And the incense was to be put on the fire before the Lord. And the fire, when we were talking about the altar, the fire always had to be lit. So it was never to go out. So when he did this, a cloud of the incense would cover the mercy seat. So Aaron was surrounded by this cloud, meaning he couldn't see the mercy seat clearly or he would die. And that's because the glory of the Lord was everywhere. So he couldn't see that clearly. And Aaron had to take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it on the front of the mercy seat on the east side. And he had to sprinkle it 7 times. And 7 is the number of completion. And we've talked about before what was inside of the Ark of the Covenant. Remember, God had instructed them to put the manna that fell from heaven. Remember when the Israelites were over there complaining that they were tired of the manna. And so God gave them meat because they asked for meat. And then he gave them so much that they ended up dying. Whole mess, these Israelites. The next item was the 10 commandments written on stone, or the law. I remember Moses broke the first ones when he came down and saw the people worshiping the golden calf. Like he had a whole fit. And the third object, there's going to be a third object placed in here when we get a little further on. But when God looked down upon the mercy seat, he could see the sins of the people. These reminders of Israel's disobedience and rebellion. He could see through the mercy seat and have those reminders of what had been done, but the blood being sprinkled covered over their sin. So it brought the atonement. Now, Aaron can move to atonement for the nation. He's done everything that he needed to do for himself to be atoned, and now he can proceed with the congregation, the goats from the congregation. And he killed the goat for the sin offering and did the same with the blood. So he had to sprinkle it the 7 times as well. And he also had to make atonement for the tent of meeting by placing the blood of the bull and the goat on the horns of the altar. Because remember, his sons had gone in there and defiled the temple or the tabernacle. Now we get to the scapegoat. So when the 2 goats were brought, one was to be killed and the other was to be let go. And Aaron had to place both of his hands on the head of the goat. Remember, when we were talking about all the different offerings, everything was mentioning a hand had to be placed. Well, in this case, Aaron had to put both hands on the head of the goat, and he had to confess all, not some, of the iniquities, the transgressions, and the sins of the people. So in this case, he's transferring the sin of the people onto the goat. And how long do you think that took? Because these people were constantly rebellious. So that prayer, that confession had to be like the longest confession because these people were just out here doing the most. And we have a ton of people. So imagine all the sins that they're committing because all the laws are put in place for a reason because people are doing these things. Like anytime you go to a job or anytime a law for the state is put in, it's because one person messed it up. At least one person was caught doing it and they were like, well, I guess we gotta put this out here and say don't do this. And this is the consequence for that. So Aaron had to confess all of this and transfer this into the goat. After he was finished, the goat was sent into the wilderness. And this is where the assistance comes in for Aaron. So this is where another person comes and takes that goat and walks it out to the wilderness and lets it go. So the sin was put away, sent to an uninhabited place to be out of sight. Now, after that had been done, Aaron now has to remove his linen garments, wash himself, and come back out with his priestly garments in glory and beauty. So he's victorious and cleansed now. And he proceeds to the burnt offering, not only for himself and his household, but also for the people. And the person that handled the scapegoat also is required to bathe and change clothes before coming back into the camp. So by him even handling this goat, he was unclean and had to go through his own cleansing to be able to come back and join the people. The bull and the goat whose blood was used for the sin offering are required to be taken outside of camp and fully burned. Now, that person that handled those animals is also required to bathe and change clothes before returning back to the camp. This ceremony was required to be done once a year in the 7th month of the 10th day. On this day, the people were to afflict themselves, meaning they had to fast, they did not work, and they denied themselves. So this was showing their sympathy, their sorrow, and it showed humility and repentance, understanding what the gravity of what the Day of Atonement represented, the need for the atonement. The high priest made atonement for the sins of accident and omission committed during the previous year by the Israelites. Imagine having to wait an entire year. Like you got to save all this up, and this is done once a year to atone for yourself and for the people.
That'd be hard.
It would. Like, can you think about how long it would take for the confession every year?
Forever.
Like, oh my goodness. No wonder it's a whole day. So this was an important day, most notably the most solemn of all Old Testament ceremonies. Understand, the high priest was a sinner. He still had to atone for his own sins, and this had to be repeated year after year. So showing it's not a one and done. It's okay, we're going to have to do this every year because no amount of blood could atone forever in this process. But Aaron had to go through this process alone, and it required exact obedience, remember, or it would say, lest he die. But Jesus, on the other hand, was sinless and didn't have to atone for himself, but instead he atoned for all people. He made the ultimate work of atonement by taking the sin of the world and placing them upon himself. So he didn't need to, but he chose to because of his love for us. And Jesus fulfilled this through the principle of substitutionary atonement, the idea that one bears the burden meant for another. On the Day of Atonement, lots determined which of two goats would be sacrificed to the Lord and which would be sent alive into the wilderness as the scapegoat, carrying away the people's sins. Jesus absorbed humanity's guilt and condemnation. Isaiah describes how the Lord made the iniquity of us all fall upon him. And there's some reference points there. I'm just going to go and look for them quickly. Bless you. Isaiah 53, 4 through 6 says, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. So Jesus paid everything for us. And Paul explains that Christ became sin for us so the believers might become the righteousness of God. And that's in 2 Corinthians. I really need to get little tabbies for my Bible. Okay, so 2 Corinthians 5:21. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Christ's sacrifice accomplishes what the scapegoat symbolized but could not achieve, and that was permanent removal of guilt through his death. So Jesus didn't have to repeat this. It was a one and done situation. And animals whose blood entered the Holy of Holies had their bodies burned outside the camp. And similarly, Jesus suffered outside the gate to sanctify his people through his own blood. Remember, he had to be led away and put on the cross. And I'm looking for Hebrews 10. Next time I'm marking these guys. My Bible is a whole chaotic mess anyway. I have papers all throughout it, notes, I have little tabbies on the side.
And
I have pens. I have like 4 different pens in 4 different places. Okay. Hebrews 10, almost there. 1 through 18. For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come instead of the true form of these realities, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? Since the worshippers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have any consciousness of sins. But in these sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins every year. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body have you prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as it is written of me in the scroll of the book. When he said above, you have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrifices and offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings, These are offered according to the law. Then he added, Behold, I have come to do your will. He does away with the first in order to establish the second. And by that will, we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. And every priest stands daily at his service, offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God, waiting from that time until his enemies should be made a footstool for his feet. For by a single offering, he has perfected for all time those who are being sanctified. And the Holy Spirit also bears witness to us. For after saying, This is the covenant that I will make with them. After those days, declares the Lord, I will put my laws on their hearts and write them on their minds. I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. Where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer any offering for sin. Jesus transcends the scapegoat figure by combining the sacrificial death of one goat with the expulsion of the other, while achieving what neither animal could: eternal atonement that requires no repetition. Any questions, comments, concerns on that? Okay.
Nope.
Everybody's still doing okay?
Barely. I ain't
Yeah.
gonna lie. I'm sleepy.
Barely. Okay. Well, we are on the last chapter. If we can get through 17, then we are just a little bit further through Leviticus. And this one's a pretty short chapter. And then we just have a couple verses and then we're done. So we will make our way through it. I just have to get back there. Okay. Okay, last chapter. So this is the place of sacrifice. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the people of Israel, and say to them, This is the thing that the Lord has commanded. If any one of the house of Israel kills an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or kills it outside the camp, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it as a gift to the Lord in front of the tabernacle of the Lord, blood guilt shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. This is to the end that the people of Israel may bring their sacrifices that they sacrifice in the open field, that they may bring them into the Lord, to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and sacrifice them as sacrifices of peace offerings to the Lord. The priest shall throw his blood, the blood of the altar of the Lord, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and burn the fat for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons, after whom they whore. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations. And you shall say to them, Any one of the house of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn among them, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it to the Lord, that man shall be cut off from his people. If any one of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, No person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. Anyone also of the people of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn among them, who takes in hunting any beast or bird that may be eaten, shall pour out his blood and cover it with earth. For the life of every creature is its blood. Its blood is its life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, You shall not eat the blood of any creature, for the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. Every person who eats what dies of itself, or what is torn by beasts, whether he is a native or a sojourner, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash them or bathe his flesh, he shall bear his iniquity. Okay, so this is really just going back to idol sacrifice or idolatry and the eating of blood. So the killing of animals outside of the temple to offer to idols was prohibited and would get a person cut off and exiled. This isn't meant to say killing for the purpose of meat to eat is prohibited. This is specific to sacrificing. If an animal was killed for meat, the animal had to be drained of the blood prior to being able to consume the meat. If an animal was slaughtered for sacrifice, it was to be presented to the Lord. The sacrifice would be, of course, performed by the priest. The priest would throw the blood on the altar and burn the fat. And we previously studied that the life is in the blood and the fat was reserved solely for the Lord. This law was setting the command that the people were not to offer random sacrifices for purposes of pagan practices. Notice how God made mention of no longer sacrificing to goat demons who they were whoring after. I had to look that up. The term goat demons refers to demonic entities associated with wild and desolate places, spiritual forces that represented rebellion against the true God. Once people began setting up their own forms of sacrifice, pagan worship elements from surrounding cultures were creeping into the camp. Imported prostituting Israel's spiritual commitment by turning from a faithful God to gods that would fail, that serve no purpose. Some people give the idea that the one that consumed the blood received the life strength of a creature that supplied the blood. Commentator Adam Clark states, it appears from history that those nations who lived most on blood were very fierce, savage, and barbarous, such as the Scythians, the Tartars, the Arabs of the desert, Scandinavians, some of whom drank the blood of their enemies and made cups of their skulls. I was just like, wait, what? But we see that in movies though.
We do.
Like where they'll do barbaric things like that. So it's not like, yeah, it's a thing. But God had stated that he will set his face against the person who eats blood and will cut him off from the people. The blood was reserved for the Lord for the purpose of atonement. Life belongs to God, and when enough blood leaves your body, life will leave your body. And there's heavy emphasis here on the sanctity of blood and what it was to represent. The shedding of blood without the proper sacrificial protocol was forbidden. And for anyone hunting an animal to eat, again, the blood had to be poured out and buried.
Right.
And this was a way to honor the blood, not just leaving it on the top of the ground. The life was returned to the ground where it came from. I remember back in Genesis 4:10, where we read that Abel's blood had cried out to God from the earth. Like after Cain had killed him,
Right.
he said, "What have you done? The blood of your brother Abel cries out to me from the earth." And if a person ate from an animal that died on its own or was killed by another animal, he was required to bathe and wash his clothes, and he would be unclean until the evening. If he did not cleanse himself afterwards, he would be ceremonially impure and assume all responsibility and bear the consequences of the bloodshed.
Dang.
And I put a few verses there if you'd like to look them up. But that just covers the sanctity of blood that points towards the powerful work of the blood of Jesus Christ. So there's Ephesians 1:7, Colossians 1:14, and verse 20, and then Hebrews 10:19 and 20. But all of the notes and everything that we've gone over for the entirety of Leviticus, including this week's, they are in the notes section on the Discord. So you can refer back to them or and look those things up.
Very good.
Anybody have anything to add before we get off? All right. Well, I will let everybody go. Thank you for sticking it out. And
Good night, guys.
everybody have a good night.
Good night. Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Bye,
Night.
everybody.
Have a good night,
See you all
everybody.
next week.
Good night. See you next week.
Yes.